Welcome to the West Energy Podcast, powering your career. The energy transition plays a crucial role in Australia and the world's future, and the success of this shift hinges on the people driving it. This podcast will interview a diverse group of energy leaders to provide valuable perspectives on career development, leadership, navigating the energy transition, and discussing strategies to manage mental health and wellness in a high-pressure industry. I'm your host, David Smith, the founding partner and director of West Energy and West Recruitment. With over 20 years of recruitment experience and a team that specialises in recruitment across the whole energy supply chain, we're really excited to bring you this series. Welcome to the West Energy Podcast, powering your career with David Smith. I am David Smith and very excited to have Mark Branson.
Hello.
Chief Development Officer, Voyager Renewables, joining us today. So thanks for making the trip down from Newey.
Thanks, David. Yeah, good to be here. Yeah. Appreciate it.
So let's get stuck into it. My first question.
Yeah.
Tell me about yourself. Who is Mark Branson in your own words?
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks, David. Appreciate it. And yeah, totally agree. It's we need more people in the industry, and particularly at the moment. So yeah, appreciate the chance to be part of this. Who's Mark Branson? Well, I've been in the energy industry probably for 15 years or so, working in development roles and in consultancy as well. But before that, I was an ecologist, and really, I'm just someone who's passionate about the environment.
Yep.
Really keen to see a change, and really keen just to help try and push the industry and push people to make good decisions about energy usage, waste, and climate.
Right.
Yep.
What about on a personal basis?
That's a deep question.
It certainly is. It don't go too deep.
Yeah.
Top level, what do you like to do? What's outside of work?
Yeah, outside. Look, realistically, I'm a dad. So I've been married now for 17 years to my wife Lauren. She's fantastic, and we've got 5 kids together.
Yeah.
And so I've now got. My oldest son's a teenager, and we've got 4 other kids who are going to be teenagers over the next 4 or 5 years. And so we've just got a very, very busy house at the moment. So work is kind of a side project for me.
Yeah.
Spend a lot of time just enjoying family life, to be realistic. So.
I can imagine what your weekend will be all about: sport and more sport.
And
parties.
It should be, but at the moment it's been raining so much in Newcastle that it's just been about rain, and more rain. So, but no doubt we'll get back on the rugby field at some point. So,
3 ice-breaking questions for you. If you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be and why?
Oh, yeah, I always find this one hard. So everyone always comes up with such great responses and, really clever, people from the past. For me, it's probably just 3 of my close mates.
Okay.
So I won't name them, but I think they know who they are. Some guys who I hang around with fairly regularly at the moment, and keep me very grounded. Yeah. So the type of people who just manage to keep you in an unguarded moment. So that's probably where I would most enjoy to spend my time in an evening if I had the chance. So
perfect. When you were at school, what did you want to be, or what did you want to do?
Well, I wanted to be an archaeologist, and definitely didn't end up becoming that. But I actually thought that was somebody who digs up dinosaur bones, and it's not. That's a paleontologist. So that was really what I wanted to do when I was a kid, is I wanted to dig up dinosaurs. So if I knew how to spell paleontologist at the time, I probably would have. Yeah, so that was my dream job, and didn't land it, unfortunately. So.
Well, I haven't had that as an answer as yet, so that's once again another unique one. And then thirdly, what's one thing most people don't know about you?
Well, I had a semi-pro career in alpine skiing when I was young, and semi-pro is definitely the word. So I cracked the top 10 in Australia once in giant slalom.
Yeah. What's that? Going down quickly on the mountain?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, generally going down. Yep. Yeah, so I used to race when I was a kid. My dad was really into skiing, and I was very lucky that he used to take me down a lot, and I was in a race team for a few years. It's really just a pretty indulgent kind of occupation when you're a kid, but it was a great way to spend time in the mountains, and I love spending time outside. So that's been kind of a big part of my life over the past 40 or so years.
So when did you grow up to do that, or you were just going for weekends to?
Yeah, so I was in Sydney, and probably when I was in year 5, I started to catch the bus down from Sydney down to the snow. One of the parents would take us down and chaperone us, and there was a few other kids, and we'd kind of go and sleep on the floor of this a lodge in the mountains at Charlotte Pass, and so Charlotte Pass was a place I spent a lot of time, and lucky enough to be able to take my kids back there these days.
Awesome.
So
you still got it, or?
Oh, I'm still the best skier in my family.
Okay, good.
I think. I still got it over my brother, I think, thankfully, but he'd probably disagree with you. So,
I bet. So I've chatted to 6 people thus far on the podcast, and all of them have had very different starts to their career. So as I said to your friend Andy Evans, it sounds a little bit like the start of a joke, but I've had an accountant, a lawyer, a farmer, an AFL player, a marketer, an electrical engineer.
Is that all one person?
No. 6 different ones.
Right.
But your career started very differently, and as you said earlier, in ecology. So why did you study ecology, and what has it contributed to where your career has ended up?
Look, I studied science at Macquarie Uni and mastered in ecology. And so I spent about 5 years. I did a bachelor's degree and then followed that up with a Master of Science degree. And I think Macquarie University at the time had such a fantastic life sciences division. And I was really attracted into birds in particular. So I'm a birder, not a closet birder. I'm very loud and proud out birder.
Yep.
So my master's degree was looking at hydropower systems in Northern Australia and kind of how they affect downstream riverine environments and the bird assemblages you get there. So I spent a lot of time kind of camping on rivers in the East Kimberley region, and for me that was like the dream. I was able to spend a lot of time outside doing what I love, which was birding and researching, spending time with real proper grassroots Australians in kind of remote parts of Australia. And I love travel. I love spending time outdoors, and that was really what drove me into working in the environment industry. My wife and I, Lauren, at the time we were dating, and she was in a similar kind of form of research. She's probably much better at science than I was, so I kind of followed her around on a few different jobs and spent time on some remote islands as well. So Christmas Island in the Indian Ocean we were living on for a while, and then ended up in Tasmania on King Island as well. So that really propelled me into the world of environmental science. I think that was really foundational for me moving into consultancy and then ultimately into the energy industry as well and project planning. Yeah.
I need to go back to the bird part that you mentioned earlier. Just a fascination from being young, or where'd that come from?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. I'm not sure exactly. I think, birders will understand that you can be in any place in the world and you can still be kind of constantly observing and identifying birds, right? And you don't even have to see them. You can hear them, and that's often the most exciting part of being a birder is that kind of that oral identification, the listening to the sounds. And so they're just such a diverse group of animals. They're not all of them are beautiful, but most of them are, and they kind of cover all of the different environments in the world. Hypermobile or highly sedentary, the full spectrum of species is really fascinating, and it's a really easy thing to do. You can kind of do it anywhere you go. So it's easy to get hooked.
Do you have a favorite bird, or have you had an experience where you've seen a really rare bird that you just?
So many of them.
Yeah. Okay.
No, there's some really cool ones though, and I've seen some pretty special ones over the years. Red-tailed tropic bird is fantastic species that spent a lot of time with on Christmas Island. Abbott's booby, orange-bellied parrot, which I spent a lot of time studying and working on. The list goes on and on.
I could keep talking about that, but we'll get back to what the podcast is all about.
You don't want to bore everyone to death.
So how did you make the leap into energy and renewables then?
Yeah, so the similarity is actually closer than you might think. So, when Lauren and I moved back to Sydney after time traveling and researching, I ended up working as a consultant. So I spent about 8 or 9 years as an environmental consultant. And so the field work that I gained through the research and, working in really remote, challenging environments gave me a real leg up in consultancy. So being able to identify species and understand environmental assemblages is really useful in environmental impact assessment. And so I spent a lot of time working as a consultant in the infrastructure and energy industry. And so back in the early 2000s, that was generally coal or gas. So I spent a lot of time working on coal projects in New South Wales, worked on the big on the big gas rush in Queensland in the early 2000s, all of the Curtis Island and Bowen Basin developments. I spent a lot of time in the bush, walking around at night, looking for owls and other species. And so progressively then, moved into project management and so on in the consulting space. Around about that same time in New South Wales, there was a real push in the wind sector for developers who are moving into the industry here. And so there was a few kind of early movers, some of which I work closely with. So, Wind Prospect, who became CWP and CWP Renewables, were kind of a very early kind of industry mover here. We had Suzlon, Union Fenosa, Infigen, and a handful of others who were kind of developing this space. And so I was desperate to move into that sector, and had a couple of project managers I worked with, and we kind of pulled together a bit of a plan and started to do a lot of the ecology work and the planning work for those wind farm projects. And so it became really obvious to me that at that point in time that these were not only important projects but really interesting to work on when you're a developer and a project planner. They're complex and they involve a whole range of different disciplines, and so there's an element of kind of intellectual fascination about them as well, because they're a bit like a puzzle you've got to unlock. How do you work around all these constraints and still get a viable, feasible energy project up off the ground? So it was a progression over time, but it was very kind of intentional from my part, and particularly to move into the wind space. And so from there, ended up working as a developer, and the rest is kind of history there.
So I'm constantly amazed by the energy industry, and I love hearing about some of the incredible innovations and projects that are taking place. Now, the first one I will remember is Sun Cable, and the whole idea, as someone who didn't really know energy at the time, that we could set up a whole lot of solar panels, have a cable that runs into Singapore, and then we can power part of Singapore. That was sort of the first huge project I heard about, and I went, that is just amazing that we can sort of think about doing that, and then you basically start to putting that into development. Now, you worked at Sun Cable. I think you were employee number 7.
That sounds right.
Early on. Run me through your 4 years there, as there must have been a huge amount of highs, but knowing and reading about sort of the business, probably a few challenging or maybe some lows.
Yeah, what a roller coaster. Sun Cable was a fantastic initiative and really very visionary, right? And so you got to give full credit to the founders, I think, for not only having the vision and the initiative to develop a project like that from scratch, but also having the balls to go out and take it on. Yeah. And so, I joined Sun Cable right after the Series A capital raise in 2019, so end of 2019. And it was right around a period of time where I was at a kind of a relatively low point in my career, kind of, emotionally, and kind of what I was looking to achieve. And I was really looking for something that would excite me and get me motivated to really commit and get behind. And so, I went and had a coffee with David Griffin, and it was December 2019. And I can remember he sat me down and he just absolutely unloaded all of this information on me at the interview, and basically explained everything about the project and where he wanted to take it, but also all the challenges and issues he was having around, land access and negotiations and traditional ownership and government relations and project planning and energy and, transmission losses and blah, 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 blah. I was just so inspired, not just because he had so much motivation and energy, but also because he was willing to let somebody in to try and help him solve this problem. And I think it was a really fundamental part of why I wanted to participate. It was because really David is and was a very inspiring character to work for. And also it really has a great ability to, generate enthusiasm from people. And so it was a great initiative, and the best thing about it, there are a lot of great things, to be honest with you. It was a fantastic time, but the people, it sounds like a cliche, right? But the people at Sun Cable were just such high caliber. So, Mac Thompson, who's a co-founder, had this kind of very particular hiring routine, and it involved a lot of testing and, putting 3 people through their paces. And you're making sure that you had people who were high functioning and intelligent, but also people who had the right cultural fit. And
so it was a mix of the cultural and technical testing.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Drew in just these incredible cohort of people who were raw motivated and excited and really wanted to get amongst it. And so that was a really great journey. And so we took it from, when I joined, I think I was the third or fourth person after the founders. And at its nexus, it was probably 120 odd, I think it was, personnel working in that business. And there was more than just the Australia-Asia Power Link happening at the time. There was a huge number of research projects and new developments and a whole range of other initiatives. And then, of course, there was a very well publicised shareholder dispute and fallout. And then came the kind of great undoing. And unfortunately, at that time, the founders kind of got rolled out of the project. I think that was a real loss for the project. And certainly, the new shareholders have taken it forward in their own form, how they want to see the project. But it's really, I think, quite different from the initial vision. And certainly, I think has been a lot of probably lost time and a lot of people have probably lost a bit of confidence in it because of that. And so, I took away a lot out of that experience, some great relationships, and I've still got a huge amount of respect for the people I worked with through that time. And I really wish the project, the best of success. I really hope it does succeed.
Yeah.
And because I would love to see it at such a important initiative, whether it's the power supply to Darwin or the power supply to Singapore, they're both pretty ambitious projects.
It must be so hard. Like, you no doubt put so many hours of blood, sweat and tears, relationships, emotional investment in the project, and for it to go that way, it must have been a bit heartbreaking in terms of the lows at the end, or?
Oh, definitely. Some people kind of suggest that work should be something you don't get emotionally attached to, and you go in and you get your work done and you go home, and that's not who I am, and that's certainly not who the people that I like working with. That's not how they behave either, and so when the project kind of and the business came unraveled, it was very emotionally trying, and I think there are a lot of people who, if they're listening to this podcast now and they were in Sun Cable and went through that project, that process of voluntary administration, and then the redundancies that came after that, and the kind of the restructuring and the refunding process and the sale of the business, is pretty traumatic, right? And even if you're not a founder and a shareholder, you can still be committed to a business, and that's definitely what Sun Cable had, and perhaps it still does to some degree, but I don't think it's probably lost a bit of its shine, probably. But either way, it's one of these learnings, right? Yeah. And so that was a really big, important process of learning for me in my career.
And that's what I wanted to ask you. I think through good and bad times, hopefully you learn things from it. If you took one thing away from that process, what would have it been?
Oh, look, the first one is obviously, dare to dream, right? Don't be afraid of having a crack.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of examples of people who have taken on really ambitious things and succeeded, right? But the world is littered with a dozen examples of failures for everyone that's succeeded. But that shouldn't stop you, right? And part of it is about conviction. But the other part is about making sure that you've got the support and the support network you need to actually pull this thing off. So that was a really big learning. And the other one was kind of the power of the team. When as it was growing, there was kind of this first wave of recruitment. I can remember there was probably, I don't know the exact numbers, but maybe there was 15 or 16 people there for a period in the first kind of year after the Series A, and all like such highly credentialed people who came into the business, all different aspects, the highly technical or the planning or the mathematicians or the corporate affairs or the land guy or the environment guy. Everyone brought such different perspectives, right? And there was probably quite a bit of conflict around the table to start with. But very quickly, I think everyone settled in to realize, actually, everybody here needs to be here at the table. And so that group went on to kind of be, the leadership group going forward. And that was kind of really important at setting the base for the project.
Yeah. I love both of those, but the dare to dream, so cool. We hope you're enjoying this episode of Powering Your Career. Clicking follow or subscribe will allow you to stay up to date with all future content. Leaving a review helps others find this podcast. And for more information on West Recruitment and how we can help, please visit us at westrecruitment.com.au. So, talking about daring to dream, you're now the Chief Development Officer at Voyager Renewables, based up in sunny Newcastle, obviously with an office here in Sydney as well. So we've spoken a few times, and it sounds like an amazing opportunity, a greenfields opportunity, but backed obviously with a global investor in CIP. Tell me about Voyager, your role, and what you're looking to achieve.
Yeah, look, Voyager Renewables is it's a new business, pretty exciting kind of initiative from Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners. So the business was set up probably around about 2 years ago now, if I think about it. So I've been with the company since December 2023, and I was the first hire. So, CIP's really been looking to go deeper in the Australian market, and wants to kind of scratch out opportunities earlier on than they have been in the past. We're not their only investment in Australia, and CIP is the type of investor who's always going to look for more opportunities and be more ambitious. So incredible access to capital across global markets, and we are effectively we're sponsored by CIP, and our mission is really to go and find new, good, high quality project sites and bring kind of a level of environmental and social governance that they don't always see from the market, and embed that in the projects really early on, so that the projects have those kind of high levels of technical and financial performance, but also social performance that are really important for their investors to continue to deploy capital on. So yeah, look, it's really exciting, and we're now about 15 staff here in Australia, and we've got a focus on New South Wales and Victoria. We've got projects in other states as well, and again, we've got, I think, a red hot team, and also just a really fun team to work with. So yeah, we've got some really exciting staff, and it was always very intentional. I wanted to make sure that we set up our office in Newcastle, right? And CIP didn't want to do that to start with. Obviously, no, they didn't set out with that intention, but managed to convince them otherwise. So that was exciting, and that was one of the first signals, I think, to me that they were serious about delegating responsibility, and that kind of latitude and trust has been really important for me, and I think it's going to be really important for the success of the business here as well. Yeah.
So apart from obviously the fact that you live in Newcastle, why base it there?
Oh, look, I actually said this at we had an office opening recently where we invited Sharon Clayton, member for Newcastle, but obviously a whole bunch of other people from the industry in Newcastle as well. And we got this great turnout. Newcastle has always been at the centre of the national electricity market. So the Hunter Valley has been exporting coal since the late 1800s. Ever since the national electricity market was set up, really the transmission has been centred around, the Hunter Valley and the Latrobe Valley. It has drawn in a huge amount of energy expertise, not just from, coal-fired generation, extraction, transport, transmission, export. You've got the port there, but also the professional services and the trades that come and that are so important to getting these projects off the ground. So there's actually an enormous amount of institutional expertise and individual intellectual property in Newcastle as well. So people who haven't been in Newcastle or haven't spent time there often underestimate it, and they're always surprised, I think, when you bring them in. And you kind of, when you go to somewhere like Renewy Beers, which is the kind of local clean energy catch up, you really realise that there's quite a big network there that's been functioning for a long time. So we're certainly not the first developer to set up their business in Newcastle, and it's important that the regions that are at the coalface of the energy transition really participate. And so, Newcastle is our headquarters. We've got 10 people there at the moment, and we've got a couple of people in Perth, Melbourne, and Sydney. But, Newcastle is HQ, and that's important for people to realise, and I think it gives us a bit of an edge.
Absolutely.
So I moved to Newcastle probably 15 years ago. So I can't claim to be local yet, but I have had. I've got 5 kids who are growing up there, and maybe some of them will hang around long term. Who knows? But I mean, I'm not here to promote Newcastle and tell people to move there or come there and see it. But from my perspective, it gives us everything we need. So, with 5 kids and a demanding career, and my wife's also got runs her own business, and she's extremely successful. Living in a regional centre allows you to have so much time back in your life. So if you don't have to commute, an hour each way, and you can walk 15 minutes across town to get to your office, all of a sudden you just get a huge amount of flexibility back in your life. And also I think that the people that you encounter, you come across and deal with the same people so often that it breeds a much stronger sense of community. So when you're raising a young family, I think that's really important. Yeah. It's not always important for everyone, but for us it is. And we love the outdoors. We like running, biking, swimming, surfing, and you can do all of that within 5 minutes of your home, and still be there to pick the kids up from the footy, or drop them off in the mornings. So yeah.
So that was a perfect lead-in to my next question. So thanks for that, Mark.
All right, good segue.
Perfect. So I've been having a lot of conversations of late with people who are all saying the same thing. Life seems like it's getting busier. It's more complex. The juggle between work, kids, friends, exercise, building a career is harder than ever. So firstly, do you agree with that statement?
100%.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I thought that would be the case. And then I suppose as someone who's got 5 kids and you're navigating a very demanding and successful career in starting up a greenfields business, how have you managed it all? And how do you make sure you maintain that balance between work and home and the rest?
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely not here to kind of promote, myself as being successful in work-life balance. It's definitely a constant battle, depending on the day of the week. I think, you could, my wife would argue that, some days are better than others at achieving, getting around and dealing with the kids and so on. But look, it's hard, right? And anyone who tells you it's not hard is either lying or they're, missing something. Work-life balance is always a challenge, right? And so for me, part of the trick was moving to Newcastle, and I got attracted there back in 2010 by one of my great old bosses, who is his name's Will Ellis, and I'm sure a lot of people in the industry would know Will. He's a very convincing salesperson, and gave me that pitch at the time, which was, come up to Newcastle, you'll love it, and it's just so easy, and it has been easier. But it doesn't mean that it's not a constant challenge. So the relationship between Lauren and I is really important, right? So we've got, I'd say, a really strong relationship. We've been together 24 years now, and we've been married for 17 of that. And you've always got to be willing to compromise. So, she's running a small business and has been for nearly a decade now. I've been, working and traveling in the energy industry for, the same amount of time. And then we've got 5 kids who have still got their same needs, right? And so they've got to be, taken to the doctors or taken to school or picked up and taken to footy training or, whatever the issue is at any given time. And somebody's got to do that, right? We don't have any family in Newcastle, so it's either her or it's me. And so, you have to find that trust and compromise in your relationship. And it's not always easy. You get angry at each other and you get frustrated, but you got to come back to the fact, well, it's us against the world, right? And the kids are relying on us. So in terms of that kind of family setup, that's really important for us, and we've recognized that now for some time. And on the work front, I think you've got to be realistic that, like, there are periods of time where it's going to be busy and you've got to graft and you've just got to dig in and get work done. But you've also got to recognize that you're a human and your staff are human as well. And if you flog them too hard, they're going to walk out and find another role. Yeah. And so, part of your job as a leader in this business development is making sure that A, you're taking on the right amount of opportunities at the right time, and B, that you're giving people the resources and the time and the funding that they need. And that, I think, is the secret sauce, and constantly kind of turning the dials and trying to get the settings right on all of those things. Yeah. And so if I was to sit here and kind of proclaim to you that I'd nailed it, I'd be absolutely lying. But I recognize, yeah, that's right. And I recognize that it's something you got to constantly work at. So, and having good people is really important. But also, I think having the humility to check in with people that you trust, even if they report to you, and just check on, like, how am I doing? Like, how's the rest of the team feeling? Are you okay? Like, how's the workload? That's really important. And getting that feedback directly from them is critical.
Yeah. And you sort of touched on this. As a leader, how do you support others in your team to get that balance too? Like, is it checking in on them? Is it living by example? Like, how do you do that as a leader?
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure that I do it particularly well, but I think having a healthy, honest relationship with your team is important. It's difficult. So, I've got, I think, 6 direct reports, but we've got 16 people in the business, and anybody in the business knows that they can come and knock on my door and just, come and tell me if there's something wrong. Some people will do that, but a lot of people won't. So actually, part of the process that's important to me is trying to carve out some time individually with each of those people who you work directly with, and have that unguarded moment where you can really read their body language, understand what it is that they're trying to tell you, so what's implicit in what they're saying as opposed to what they're directly telling you. And I find that if you can get a couple of hours a week or even a month with people where you're in that kind of private environment, whether it's, you could be sitting on a train or sitting on a plane going to Melbourne or walking around the city like I just was with one of my team. And you just kind of have that, you're not dealing with a specific project issue or an email or a phone call that you just received or a planning submission that you just made. It's more about, okay, well, like, what's going on with you right now? Is everything all right? I noticed that you seem a bit frustrated in that meeting. What's going on? And so that, I think, builds a huge amount of trust. And for me, I'm a relator. Like, I'm somebody who really needs that connection with people. Even though I'm an introvert, I still really like having a one-on-one relationship with people. So I hate conflict. I like good relationships, and that kind of personal connection is really important to me.
Mental health and wellness are very important topics to me, and something that I discuss in every episode of this podcast. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you've been honest in previous conversations that we've had to share that you've had your own mental health challenges, as have I. How do you personally manage your mental health and well-being from where you've been, and what have you learned from sort of having good issues over the years?
Yeah, well, look, mental health is really important to me. Look, I mean, most of my issues are probably first world problems, right? To me, mental health is, and particularly growing up with 4 sons, right? I kind of, it's very, men in particular, I think, struggle with communication, and also I think generally, it's a generalized statement, but I think it's harder for blokes to make and keep friends in the long term, right? And so, whereas I think, women can be much better at kind of maintaining relationships. So I think a lot of, stress and isolation and working late and feeling financial pressures and, trying to do 1,000 things at once is all exacerbated by technology, right? And so there are so many forms of communication these days. Everyone's got, WhatsApp and Messenger and emails and, Teams and, you name it. I'm not really on social media, but then people have got, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, LinkedIn, I'm hardly ever on LinkedIn just because I've already got enough information coming at me all the time. And I think that what we're dealing with now for the past, let's say 15 years, we've had mobile phones and social media and all this technology. It's becoming more and more demanding, right? I can't tell you how many times I forget my password. I have to figure out which, 2-factor authenticator I'm using and, all this stuff that we deal with. And that just piles on top of all these day-to-day issues you're dealing with. For me, there's nothing more important than getting away from all that stuff. So, on a Sunday, I like to go for a long trail run, often with Lauren, and we'll get out. And we went for one this week, and you get out. It's raining, and you just get in the bush and just get away from it. And in Newcastle, we can do that really easily. But 4 or 5 years ago, I was probably at a pretty low point. It was like during Suncable, we were going through this VA. We had to make a bunch of redundancies. New management came in, founders got rolled. It was like super dark time. Yeah. And still on top of that, you got lots of travel and all the kids stuff still going on. And so life just keeps rolling on, right? It doesn't stop for you. And I've got a really close mate who's in, not exactly the same life situation as me, but pretty close. And he was going down to Merewether Baths at 5 a.m. During winter and going swimming for a couple of Ks. And he said to me, why don't you just come down? I was like, don't be stupid. Like, it's winter, it's 5 a.m., the water's freezing. Why would I do that? You're a loon. And eventually got to the point where he, just basically convinced me, like, just come here, give it a try. And cold water swimming has been, I think, a game changer for me. And I can remember after the second or third time that, I went swimming with this crew who I'm now really close with, I can remember coming back and talking to Lauren as I was, trying to warm up in the shower. I was like, I think I found my people. And it was just so fundamental. These other people, everyone's going through their own stuff, right? And anyone who tells you that, they don't get mental health issues or everything's cool, either they're in a really good patch at the moment or they're lying. And so the people that, I've been cold water swimming with or now, we do a lot of running together and we do cycling, and everybody's going through their own stuff, right? And sometimes you just need to break from all the shit, right? You need to get away from all the stuff. And for me, that's awesome, is getting out and going cold water swimming, whether it's in the ocean or in the baths or whatever it is. It just helps you get away from all the noise. And so that's been really helpful to me. And I just, I can't thank Phil enough for kind of encouraging me to get out and do that. And I think I've been able to return the favor for him recently. And, it's those kind of friendships I think that are critical. I don't have a huge network, but I have a handful of really good mates who I know I can rely on. And that's important.
Yeah, I love my swimming as well. Haven't sort of braved it in terms of the ocean swimming, but it's one of those things that if you're doing laps following the black line, which is what I do, people can't call you. They can't contact you at your own time, and you get very limited amount of time a week where that occurs. Yeah.
Have you seen those underwater headphones?
I've intentionally not got them.
Why do you want those?
No, I know. I do not get those.
People can call you and you'll get your reminders and you hear that new email.
No, I try to steer clear of even having the Apple Watch, so it doesn't even buzz me. I just want my own time, and I love everyone in my life, but it's that hour that I might get to myself that resets me of the day. And as my wife says, if I don't exercise, then I can go into some dark places. So I think the exercise to start the day gets me in the good frame of mind and ready to go. And I think you've made a few good points here. I laugh with the whole group of my mates of mental health nights where we catch up and you do it over a beer, a wine, a walk or something like that.
I like that.
Just catching up, talking and asking that question, how are you? And making sure you're okay. But I agree with what you say.
Yeah, you got to do it. Absolutely. And you never know when it's going to pay dividends, right? But just important and a good way to live your life as well. So,
absolutely. So let's talk about the energy industry again.
Oh yeah, okay. Yep.
We'll go back to that. What do you personally love about the energy industry, and why should people consider building a career in it?
Oh, look, I mean, the obvious ones are, what we're trying to do at a macro level, right? And we're trying to completely change an industry that's been operating for 70, 80 years in Australia. It's a massive undertaking. It feels like we are breaking, or dare I say it, we have broken the back of it, but there's still a long way to go, particularly with the kind of energy projections that we've got over the next 20, 30 years. So demand's going to continue going up, particularly with kind of digitalization of our information. So that's one thing, right? Okay, macro level, we're trying to change the game, right? We're trying to move away from carbon intensive sector to clean sector. But more importantly, it's a super diverse industry, right? You can work in wind, you can work in solar, you can work in gas, you can work in batteries, you can work in transmission, you can work in transport, you can work in roads, you can work in earth moving, you name it. You can participate, right? And the people who are really going to do the heavy lifting are not the developers and the financiers. It's the guys who do the building, right? It's the guys who do the operating, guys and girls. It's the people on the ground who, in the communities, who are living and breathing these projects every day. So, developers can define what projects need to be, and they can raise the capital, and they can, get the projects started. But the people who finish them and operate them, maintain them, are the really important people. So that's exciting. And, on a personal level, I think it's the travel and the people that you meet and the kind of buzz and the excitement. So there's no doubt that it's an exciting industry to be in, right? And I think if you are someone who's self-motivated, intelligent and willing, then you will find a role in this sector. There's an enormous need for talent. There are so many companies working in this space now. Yeah, we're definitely seeing the industry, I think, almost at its peak in terms of we've been ramping up for a long time, and we're now getting some serious momentum, particularly with the kind of stability of the federal government at the moment. It feels like we're at a point where we're going to see really sustained ongoing growth for the next 3, 5, perhaps more years. And that on projects of this, they take a long time to develop and mature and finance and build. You need that. You need stability in policy, and so we're kind of. It feels like we're at that point now, which is incredibly exciting.
Yeah, it's funny. What the election 2 or 3 weeks ago now, as someone in recruitment, it was amazing to see almost the election done and a influx of roles or confidence in terms of hiring again. And there was a whole lot of obviously uncertainty which way was politics going to go at that point in time, and it's good to sort of see that, as you said, the momentum. Everyone knows we're going to continue on the journey of where we've been, and hopefully, continually going that way. But I think as an industry, it's so exciting of where it's going to be in 5 years, where it's going to be in 10 years.
Absolutely,
certainly going to keep evolving and have so many opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. And we need to attract people from other sectors and industries as well, and give them the tools they need to be ready to work, right? So recruiters stand to benefit enormously from this this next wave. So
just a matter of finding all the talent and
that's right.
Matching that up. So in your role, you engage with a whole wide range of energy companies sort of across the sector and throughout your career, locally and internationally. Are there any common themes or challenges that you're seeing as companies navigate the energy transition here in Australia? And in your view, what does the industry need to get right, and what do we need to, avoid to ensure a successful transition?
Working on Suncable, I was kind of out of the national electricity market for 4 years or so. And it was really interesting. Like, I was working for CWP Renewables as a wind developer, left that company in 2019, and now I'm kind of back in the business. And so I think we've seen in that time period an enormous land rush, right? And so there's been a big push from developers, and then the people who are acquiring projects, the investors, and then the utilities, all starting to progressively move towards onshore wind, solar and BESS, and pumped hydro to a lesser extent. That has completely changed the game. And so, at Voyager, we're late to the game when it comes to project origination, but, my view is that this transition is going to extend far beyond 2030. My reason for that is that we are seeing huge numbers of projects which are being developed, not able to connect to the grid. And so you look at Southwest Res, for example. So every prospector and developer and their dog went to Southwest Res and went and secured some sites and started to develop projects because Project Energy Connect is coming. And then a new access scheme process is brought in. And so as government introduces new policy to try and get the industry under control and try and bring some kind of sense to the chaos, which needs to happen, it introduces a level of regulatory risk. So, Energy Code plays a really important role, and AMO play a critical role in making sure that we can actually, operate the energy system and get projects connected in the right locations. But I think what we're seeing is that there was, 15 to 20 gigawatts of capacity that was available in Southwest Res that wasn't able to connect in the network. And so, we're seeing money wasted, probably because there's been a big gold rush, for lack of a better term. People go and secure sites, develop them up, and then reach a point, and now probably we'll see a lot of developers walk away from them. We see that in other reses as well. And so you also see it on other parts of the network as well. So there's been, you look at the kind of on-paper capacity of generation that we've got in the national electricity market. It's enormous, right? You're talking, 50, 60, 100 gigawatts of capacity that's available to connect to the network. Well, it's not going to. We'll get a portion of that. We'll get 15 to 20% of that. We'll actually manage to connect in because there's just not enough available capacity in the right locations. So the patterns and trends that I see is that, you have prospectors and developers go and secure sites. And you have this kind of developer bias in your sites where you start to believe in your project because you set it up, right? Or you've spent a lot of money on it and therefore you believe in it. Well, that's not how it works. And so, we have to be critical about our projects and objective at every step in the way, right? Otherwise, you just waste cash and you get people's hopes up as well. So think about the farmers and the pastoralists that are on the ground who are trying to make a living and they're going through droughts or floods or fires. And then you've got a developer who's holding on to an access license saying, okay, well, yep, this project definitely has legs, whereas in reality it may not. And so I think, the industry needs to, probably take a bit of a breath when it comes to projects like that. And so, part of our development process at Voyager is we're kind of always trying to be conscious of that, not land banking, and making sure that we're kind of looking critically at every project. Does it have a chance to succeed? If it does, let's keep moving it forward. If it doesn't, then maybe let's terminate and we'll go and find the next best opportunity. Yeah.
Cool. Last but certainly not least, and I don't know if I text you to say that I wanted you to bring your crystal ball or not. No. Hopefully you did pack that, but if you didn't, let's wing it. Let's look ahead for a moment. If you had to make a few predictions, what do you think the energy industry will look like in the next 5 years? And then I'll say 10 years as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, 5 years should theoretically be easy to predict, right? What's that saying? It's like people overestimate how much change there will be in 5 years and underestimate how much change there will be in 10. So, well, in 5 years, we should be nearing the end of Albo's third term of politics, right?
Yeah.
Or of being Prime Minister, assuming he wins another election. So if you have that kind of stable policy platform, what can you achieve? So we're now at over 45% renewable electricity in the national electricity market, I think, somewhere around that. And so the next step is obviously, 50%, right? So when I first came into the energy sector, I think renewables were at something like 5%. So in that time, we've seen a lot of growth, but there's been a huge amount of investment there.
Yeah.
What can we do in the next 5 years? Well, it feels like, we should get, let's say we get V&I West built in Victoria. Energy Connect will be online and projects should be, plugging in. What was that? 3.5 gigawatts. Central West Arana, I think, should be hopefully online in 5 years. So there's another 7 gigawatts of capacity there. Maybe Western Renewables Link will come on. Maybe Hunter Central Coast Res will come in. So, those are the real near-term projects that we can see. So it feels like you can, feasibly get over 10 gigawatts of generating capacity in the market, right? Through committed projects or committed transmission projects, I should say. In another 10 years, who knows? It feels like we should be creeping up towards, like, what's that, mid-2030s? Well, all the coals are going to be coming offline if it isn't offline already. And so we should be at the point where we're past 75, 80% renewables, I would hope, in the next decade. let's see. I suppose.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Exciting times ahead.
It's going to take a lot of cranes. I can tell you. That's where I hope we are in 10 years. It feels doable, and certainly it feels like we've got momentum at the moment. We're going to need a lot of grid engineers and developers and crane operators. Can you help us with that?
westrecruitment.com.au.
There you go.
You like that one?
Right,
and my last one, and this one is off the cuff. Do we hit our 2030 target? Yes or no?
Which one? I don't know.
Good answer.
Look, I'm going to be a skeptic and say no. Okay. We're not going to hit it, but longer term, I think we can. So I think we've lost too much time over the past 5-10 years. There's been so much bickering. There's just been so much wheel spinning from not at the I'm not kind of criticizing anyone in bureaucracy, but I think most people will recognize that at a federal level we've seen too much ongoing procrastination and debate around basic policy. But I do think that transmission planners are getting far better at their jobs, like Energy Co, VicGrid. I think progressively we're getting more skills across the industry to kind of, better planning, better delivery, and hopefully that continues. And nobody's getting everything right, but I don't think anyone can expect to get everything right. What do you think?
I'm always I'm not always the optimist, so I'm hoping we're getting there, but unfortunately, gut feel based on where we've been is unfortunately not. I love the sort of how much progress, the momentum, and what people are doing at the moment. You see, obviously, a lot of these projects signing off, but as much as I want to be the optimist, I'm going to say no. I don't think we're going to hit the target, but I reckon we're going to end up pretty bloody close.
Yeah, well, everyone's going to have a home battery in the next few years. I mean, it's going to be incredible how much home storage we have, and so we'll see more solar on rooftops. That's a very hard market to control. Everyone will be driving BYDs in a few years.
I went shopping for one the other day, and I'm a big human. I actually don't fit in one. So I went out looking for either a Tesla or a BYD.
Okay.
My wife said, I've got to do the test drive and jump in it. I don't fit in any of them. So
you could drive that Volkswagen ID Buzz, and you could sit in the second row. And you go.
Well, that's what I do in my current car at the moment, Mark. So I need something where I'm not sitting in the back seat.
Yeah,
so anyway, maybe everyone's going to be driving the BYD apart from myself, or maybe I get the truck. I don't know. But time will tell on that one as well.
Yeah, very cool.
Mark, thank you so much for your time. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. As my marketing team always says, if you like the podcast, please like, subscribe, share. But Mark, thanks so much for your time. I've had a fun time.
No, it was awesome. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Powering Your Career with David Smith. Join me next time as we talk to energy leaders to provide you valuable perspectives on career development, leadership, navigating the energy transition, and strategies for managing mental health and wellness in a high-pressure industry. If you are enjoying this series, please click follow or subscribe for further episodes. And leaving a review or a comment helps others find this podcast. Also, if our team can assist you with any recruitment requirements, or you are keen to discuss your career journey, please reach out to West Energy or West Recruitment at westrecruitment.com.au. Thanks.